So today, it's my honor and pleasure to introduce Ashok, who is the Consul General of India in San Francisco. Prior to his tenure as a Consul General in San Francisco, he has been an ambassador for India in Zimbabwe, Czech Republic. He also worked at Department of Atomic Energy and represented India in the World Atomic Forum. It's my pleasure to invite him to the dais and request him to actually light the lamp to inaugurate the function.
Will you be standing here? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Nearly close it. Thank you very much. It's very encouraging to see the enthusiastic crowd on a Saturday morning. I'm not sure whether Silicon Valley has 5-day week or 6-day week. But in the government of India, we've been having 5-day weeks for a very, very long time. I want to begin by thanking GITPRO and Khanderao-ji for inviting me to this conference on emerging technology, professional development, and entrepreneurship. India today needs such innovative ideas in emerging technologies to enable us to fast-track development and bring the benefits of modern technology to the poorest of our people. We need entrepreneurs to enable digital India to make India ready for a knowledge-based future. The government of India is planning to spend about $17 billion in using technology to create a participative, transparent, and responsive government. High-speed internet, mobile phone, and bank accounts, shareable private space on a public cloud, and creating a safe and secure cyberspace. All these are part of the effort to take digital literacy to the next level. Companies here in the Silicon Valley and elsewhere in the USA can benefit greatly through their involvement in all these programs. We have defined 9 pillars of digital India. Through broadband, highways, rural and urban populations will be linked with a national information infrastructure which will integrate network and cloud infrastructure in the country to provide high-speed connectivity and cloud platforms to various government departments up to the Gram Panchayat level. Phased mobile coverage will be provided to the remaining 55,619 villages in the country. Public internet access will be assured through common service centers in Gram Panchayats and post offices, which will be converted into multi-service centers. E-governance will be possible through online applications and tracking, apart from simplification of rules and regulations. Online repositories will enable the citizens of India to keep certificates, degrees, identity documents, land records, and other key documents in the cloud, so they would not have to submit these in physical form when they are asked to do so at an office. E-Kranti will focus on mobile-first approach and integrate services and platforms such as Aadhaar, the unique identification number, payment gateways, mobile seva platforms, etc. E-education will provide free Wi-Fi in all schools, providing massive online open courses, MOOCs. E-healthcare will provide online medical consultation, medical records, medicine supply, and a pan-India platform for patient information. Technology for farmers will provide real-time and price information, online ordering of inputs, and online cash, loan, and relief payments with mobile banking. In time, we hope that this will extend also to things like prediction on helping in weather patterns, sensitivity of crop to water, and enabling the farmer to know when he needs to water, provide fertilizer, provide pesticide, and so on. Technology for security will ensure mobile-based emergency services and disaster-related services on real-time basis. JAM, the Prime Minister's vision of Jan Dhan Ayojana, you know the social security schemes, Aadhaar, and mobile phones will enable financial inclusion. This will be supplemented by micro ATM programs and common service centers and post offices. This will also help reduce, if not eliminate, corruption. And you will also have e-courts, e-police, and e-prosecution to help see speedier justice, which is a key need in today's hugely delayed justice situation. Information dissemination to citizens by government ministries and departments will be possible through open data platforms, proactive engagement through social media, and web-based platforms. The mygov.in website will crowdsource ideas from the public for design of programs such as better traffic management and using big data to make cities smarter. Online messaging to citizens on special occasions will be facilitated through emails and SMS. We will have a focus on electronics manufacturing in India with a target net zero imports by 2020 as a striking demonstration of intent. Training will be provided to 10 million students from smaller towns and villages in skills required for availing employment opportunities in the IT, ITES sectors. BPOs will be set up in 7 northeastern states to facilitate ICT-enabled growth in these states. 300,000 service delivery agents will be trained to run viable businesses delivering IT services. 500,000 people from the rural areas will be trained in telecom and telecom-related services. To see quick results, we already have instituted early harvest programs. These include IT platform for sending messages, e-greetings portal in mygov.in, biometric attendance, Wi-Fi in all universities, secure email for government officials, standardized government email design, public Wi-Fi spots in all cities with population of 1 million and above, and at tourist hubs, school books which will become e-books, SMS-based weather information and disaster alerts, national portal for lost and found children. Digital India initiatives include the Aadhaar card, which is fast becoming like the US Social Security number. 925 million people are already in Aadhaar, and by the time that I finish this, we may actually have crossed 1 billion. Direct benefit of LPG subsidies enabled through Aadhaar, scholarships, public distribution schemes, all these are possible. E-sign facilitates digitally signing a document by an Aadhaar holder using an online service. Aadhaar is mandatory for availing the e-sign service, and this is envisaged as a great leap towards large-scale adoption of digital signature and hence paperless transactions. With a view to making all government services accessible to the citizens through common service delivery outlets and ensuring efficiency, transparency, and reliability at affordable costs, the government has created a common platform, PayGov, with the facility to make online payment using net banking, credit cards and debit cards, IMPS, cash card wallets, mobile wallet, NEFT, and RTGS. DigiLocker is a service launched by Government of India in February 2015 to provide a secure, dedicated personal electronic space for storing documents of resident Indian citizens. The storage space, maximum 1 gigabyte, is linked to the Aadhaar number of the user. This helps citizens to store digitally important documents. eTAL is a web portal for dissemination of e-transaction statistics of national and state governments and e-governance projects, including mission mode projects. The Jan Dhan Yojana is the biggest financial inclusion initiative in the world. 193 million accounts have been opened by November 2015, and these zero balance accounts with accidental, and life insurance cover are enabling beneficiaries to get direct transfer into their accounts. The National Digital Literacy Mission has the objective of making one person in every family digitally literate. Citizens will be trained to operate digital devices like mobile phones, tablets, and send and receive emails, and search internet for information. They'll also be effectively trained to access various e-governance services being offered by the government. 700,000 kilometers of optical fiber will link 250 gram panchayats in the next 3 years. Service and content providers can launch e-health, e-education, and e-governance services in rural areas. E-Bhasha aims that all government websites will move from bilingual to multilingual. Digital India investments opportunities will abound. These will include building broadband infrastructure, creating identity solutions, payment systems, web or mobile-based delivery systems, cybersecurity, healthcare, telemedicine, and remote health, and smart cities. For India to transition to a digital future, it is imperative that a greater portion of its consumption is serviced locally, and this is where Make in India, especially electronics manufacturing, has greatest relevance. Investments in support of Digital India have already come in from many big companies, including Reliance, Bharti Airtel, Aditya Birla, and so on. India has now got the third largest number of startups after the US and UK. It is most timely, therefore, that we had Startup Stand Up India promoted by our Prime Minister in January this year. And the government has announced some very significant startup initiatives, which may be the most significant since 1991. These include new companies to have tax holiday for 3 years after incorporation. The new companies do not need to be subjected to any government inspection for 3 years. Filing of patents to become faster and cheaper. $1.5 billion being set aside by Government of India to fund new ventures. A mobile app to be launched which will enable incorporation of companies in a single day. And new companies can bid for government contracts. Earlier, they wanted established companies under public procurement rules with a premium on turnover and length of doing business. That is being changed. Prime Minister Modi's trip to Silicon Valley has seen continued follow-up in the innovation and startup space. There are 356 million in Indians in the 10 to 24 years who represent an aspirational group. There are deep partnerships in innovation in US and startups in India. Qualcomm, Tiger Global, Foxconn, Axel, SoftBank, Sequoia, SAIF, and Lightbox are among the well-funded and active startup investors in India. The road ahead will have many more such stories. In leading the way to entrepreneurship and innovation, Silicon Valley Indian Americans can play a beacon role in showing how modern technology adapted to Indian conditions can benefit not only Indians, but others in developing countries around the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Venkatesan ji. And we are glad that you are giving us an idea of what's happening in India and how technology is being used to make India from a developing India to a developed India. And we are glad that in any which ways we will be able to support, GITPRO will be able to do that. Now, can I request Sandeep Bhatnagar ji and Khanderao ji to give a token of appreciation to Venkatesan ji here. Venkatesan ji, can I ask you to come back on the desk? Can I request Khanderao ji to be on the desk, please? Okay. Thank you, Sandeep ji. We are now going to have our keynote speaker, Ajit Singh, who's going to be introduced by Sandeep ji. Thank you.
Hello, Ajit. Folks, I'd like to welcome Ajit Singh. He has been a venture capitalist, founding member of the Artiman Group. Ajit, please. This is for you. And I'll give you a clicker as well. Perfect.
think. Okay. Good morning again. Let's try this one. How's that? Good. So I'm going to take an odd angle to talk about entrepreneurship and innovation, and then set some horizon of where I see the investments in the next 10 years ought to be. And of course, to some degree, it's self-serving. It talks about our own investment philosophy, but I hope it helps the audience as well to figure out which areas to be looking for in entrepreneurship. So I have 3 vignettes in which I'll talk about 2 here, and if time permits, third one I'll pick up at the 10:30 a.m. Panel discussion. So the vignettes are, can we learn from nature? So innovation of life, nature, innovation that's man-made, actually have some analogs. And the question is, are they somewhat anthropomorphic? Can we learn what nature has given us? Or actually, can nature learn from us on a longer cycle? And then venture investment, as we draw from that analogy. And then finally, something to have to do with technology and healthcare. Okay, so for the first vignette, I'll say let's take a small journey through a place of immense diversity. And I'll run you through some pictures. So if you start figuring out where this place is, begin to raise your hands. And see how quickly this knowledge base builds up. Spoiler. Okay, that should tell it, right? So the first question is, where is it? Exactly. So it's a small collection of islands, very rich diversity of life on land, on water, in air, and look at the natural beauty of the place. If that doesn't inspire you to go there tomorrow. Okay, and to just put it in context, that's approximately 2,000 miles west of the Ecuadorian seacoast. Galapagos, you were the first one to raise your hand. Congratulations. Okay. Now the question is, why is that the case? So let's talk a little bit more. So if you look at the coastline anywhere in Galapagos, you'll see on the average about 100 species. You go about a mile into the ocean, you'll see also about 100 species. But if you are roughly 100 meters away from the coastline, there are 1 million species, and a new one coming up every day. Okay? So 100 at the coastline, 100 a mile away, but roughly 100 meters, 200 meters away from the coastline, 1 million species, with a new one being born every day. Okay? And we should ask the question, why is that happening? First of all, why is there such rich diversity of life? And second, how come nature is able to create that much life so quickly? If you can sense where I'm driving it. Yeah. Okay. So there are coral reefs at the seafloor. But more importantly, in this nature's platform for innovation, there is, number one, the temperature is right. So the temperature year-round is 98.6 degrees, as it turns out, which is, how many chemists or biologists in the room? Boss, I'll have to change the title of my talk soon. Anybody not from IT in this room? Anybody not? Thank you. I guess I need you in the audience. Anybody not from engineering in the room? Oh, perfect. Good, good, good. No, I was just being tongue-in-cheek. This is a fairly general talk. Temperature is right. For creation of life, you need certain temperature mixes, which is right. Second, a lot of mobility. So whatever is in the water gets churned up very frequently because of the coral reefs. And this rich mixing of diversity is actually coming, there are 3 ocean currents, one coming from the north, one coming from southeast, one coming from southwest. And this constant churn of ocean currents is bringing in cells, life, molecules from various parts of the globe. And then they're being churned up using the coral reefs, and the temperature is right. So as a result, connections are made. Life is essentially an outcome of connections being created between molecules and then between cells. Failures are discarded. So Darwin figured something out very well, exactly at this place in Galapagos. So who all have read The Journey on the Beagle? Darwin's The Origins of Life, Origin of Species, I suppose. There's also an abbreviated version available. There's a Kunji, right? If people remember Kunji from high school days? Yeah, thank you. Usi se pass hue the hum to, right? So there's a Kunji as well. It's 20, 30 pages, Cliff's Notes equivalent. You've got to read it. You've got to read how much brilliance was available without any experimental science, with very limited experimentation. Pure eye-based observation. Wasn't even a microscope at the time, actually. Okay, failures are discarded. That's nature's small magic. It's able to, whatever is not going to pass as a genetic material to enrich life easily gets discarded. This happens very quickly. There's no penalty for failure. In nature, there's no penalty for failure. Happens very quickly. That's nature's platform for innovation. Question is, where is the man-made platform for innovation? Right? So now what I mean by temperature being right, I don't necessarily mean the Bay Area temperature. Sometimes it's pretty painful. You go to San Francisco during the day, and by the evening, if you don't have a jacket, you don't feel like staying there anymore. The temperature being right means the sort of culture, the undercurrent is perfect. It's obviously a place with a lot of diversity of cultures, diversity of viewpoints, diversity of the immigrant population, as you know, in the Silicon Valley area. I'm stating the obvious. If you go to Starbucks on University Avenue, how many people have been there? Starbucks at University Avenue, or that Bucks County Cafe. Okay, what happens there? You eavesdrop on people's conversations, right? What else happens is, it's such an egalitarian system. If 2 people are talking and they're discussing some IT thing, right? I don't even remember those terminologies anymore. I've changed my field so often. If they're discussing some subject of science, technology, engineering, some business idea, it's perfectly okay for you to butt in. It's okay. In the worst case, they'll say, well, leave us alone. But in the best case, which is quite often, they'll invite you to a conversation. So because this notion of, kis roop mein Bhagwan mil jaye, you remember that phrase in our culture? You have no idea in which form, which incarnation, which avatar, you'll find a co-founder, an investor, a lawyer who's willing to do pro bono work for you in the beginning in exchange for equity. That culture of quick mixing and very egalitarian viewpoint, there's very little hierarchy. It's a very egalitarian, very cross-linked system. It's not a vertical linkage, it's a horizontal linkage. That's very prevalent. Now, it actually does not replicate in most cultures, even in the US. Try doing it in Minneapolis, doesn't work. Try doing it in Boston, maybe it works. San Diego, there was a concerted effort by state-level government over the last 30 years, it still hasn't worked. It also doesn't work that well in India, at least for now. There's a lot of emphasis, infrastructural, educational, cultural, investment-wise, which will change this over the next decade or so. But for the time being, it's a problem. And the rate-limiting factor is not money. So all the things that you talked about, the money, the government initiatives, control on corruption, maybe if not negation, at least some containment, they are not rate-limiting factors. They are absolutely essential. They are absolutely essential. There's one more rate-limiting factor, and that rate-limiting factor is, number one, it's a very hierarchical culture. So the fact that we are unable to talk laterally, but we talk hierarchically. So anybody has a family member who's a doctor, right? Can you think of the hierarchy in the physician community, even in the United States? And if you're in India, for instance, that vertical linkage is extremely strong. You turn to your senior doctor who turns to the head of the department, and you're unable to take an independent decision. At despite 10 years, 15, 20 years of experience. Second, very poor diversity of viewpoints. So growing up in India, in school level, what were our feelings if we wanted to express our view in the class, what used to happen? So there's no India bashing, right? I'm proud of being Indian, I go there every month. But it's okay to reflect once in a while and say, what were our limitations? Because when we solve those limitations, everything that you talked about will immediately go into effect. It'll have instant effect. So diversity of viewpoints, we don't encourage. We try to get kids to be conformant. We get them to do ratta. We get them to do repetition. It's changing, but still independent view of presentation of viewpoints is not encouraged. Even if you're not a rattu tota, even if you're able to have independent thinking, but to express independent thinking is a problem. And then, of course, poor listening skills. So this is extremely important. So reflect within and ask, when somebody is talking, are you waiting for the first opening, the first micro, picosecond, nanosecond, femtosecond, bang, your guns are fired, you're ready to speak? Or are you genuinely listening with curiosity? Are you genuinely listening with curiosity? Just a little bit of reflection. And for true innovation, if you connect to nature, unless there is listening, there's no interconnectivity. Unless there is true listening, there's no interconnectivity. So if it sounds very philosophical and very pontificating, that's not my intent. I'm trying to drive it to something very practical in, if you allow me 2 more minutes. Now, if you want to do disruptive innovation, think of disruptive innovation around you, whether it's in the field of energy, it's in the field of medicine like Genentech, it's in the field of search engines like Google. You pick any of these innovations that have done well and ask yourself how cross-disciplinary it was. Now, cross-disciplinarity obviously requires, or transdisciplinary, requires true dialogue, good listening skills. So my definition, true dialogue, is when two parties listen with genuine curiosity to understand each other's viewpoint, genuine curiosity. It's okay, it's very often you listen out of generosity. When you have a vertical linkage, hierarchy, the big professors listen to the student with generosity. Haan, batao, bolo, right? But that's not curiosity. You have to have genuine curiosity to understand the other person's viewpoint. So understanding the other person's viewpoint doesn't mean what is he saying. It means what is he trying to say? What is she trying to say? Now, what somebody's trying to say, to draw that out requires a lot of effort. Sometimes there's language barrier, cultural barrier, shyness, which means the listener has to make the effort to ask probing questions to draw it out. In my experience, innovation has never happened without this true dialogue, which means obviously your meetings will be inefficient. So I was very comfortable. Some of my old colleagues from my earlier companies are sitting here. I used to say, we will have an inefficient meeting today. Now, here's somebody trained in Germany at Siemens and saying, we'll have an inefficient meeting. Start at 6 p.m., glass of wine, let it go until whenever it goes. There's no need to have an end time. If you want a true dialogue, you can also have an efficient meeting where you can run through action items, but that's not conducive for innovation. I'll skip these couple, and I'll bring myself to my last slide that will require a little bit of working. It's a somewhat dense slide. So there are 5 broad themes for entrepreneurship, innovation, and consequently investment climate, which are relevant based on what I have said so far. So if what I've said so far is true, now it's for the audience to judge and feedback whether it's true. If it is true, then there are 5 specific sort of corollaries of that. So number 1, when we think of investment, and when you should think of co-founders, or you should think of a potential boss, so it not only applies to an investor, it also applies to a future entrepreneur who's looking for a co-founder. So how many of you either have started a company or want to start a company? There you go, a few people. How many of you have worked for a startup? How many of you had the luxury of selecting your boss? No, yes, it's a sincere question. How many of you had the luxury of picking up your boss? It means you had options. Right? It means you had multiple options, you picked one. Normally that luxury doesn't come that often to pick your own boss. But occasionally, if you're good, that option is there. Right? So what criteria should you use? First is the entrepreneur is more important than the idea. So is it a person who can ask, let's ask all the things of nature, diverse, able to listen, able to connect, able to discard failure, not punish failures. Are all those traits there? If they're not there, it's not very conducive for innovation. Yes, can you survive? Can you do 1 or 2 years of good work? Absolutely yes. Great companies are not built by 2 years. Not every great company is WhatsApp, right? Not every great company is Instagram. So good, groundbreaking ideas that change the world take a decade. How long did it take Genentech to come around? When did Genentech's valuation get to $100 billion? After 30 years of existence. When did Apple hit the first 100 billion in market cap? After 22 years. It's a long haul. Life is not a sprint. It's a marathon. Building a startup is also not a sprint. It's a marathon. So being in there for the long haul, I mean, somebody like Eric Lander says it takes 50 years to take an idea from beginning to fruition. He gives a great analogy. 1958 was the Montgomery March. 2008, we had the first African-American president. 1952 was the discovery of the double helix structure of the DNA. 2002, the whole genome was sequenced. It took 50 years to get a great idea to fruition where it could go to masses. So it's a long-haul journey. So now in that long-haul journey, environment changes, climate changes, investment climate changes, 2008 happens, 9/11 happens, so many things happen, and you have to pivot. So the ability of the entrepreneur or your potential boss or your potential co-founder or yourself to be able to adapt to those changes, again, look for the analogy in nature's platform, is extremely important. Second, good, strong innovation that changes, that creates groundbreaking ideas is invariably transdisciplinary. It is always transdisciplinary. It's never one field. So even the idea of a Nobel Prize in one field, one single field, has gone away. In physics, it still happens. If you look at physiology, chemistry, it's typically bringing 3 or 4 disciplines together, even in academia. In bringing a company together, that transdisciplinarity is extremely, extremely important. So I'll give you an example that ties up, for example, the first point in the 5th bullet, large markets, to that transdisciplinarity. How big is construction industry? Again, a great point for India in the future, like infrastructure building is going to be a big deal for us. How big is the construction industry globally? Anybody would like to take a guess? Sorry? It's clearly in trillions. There's no B, there's a T. It's an $8 trillion industry. It's the single largest industry after defense care and defense and healthcare. Okay? Out of 8 trillion, roughly 4 trillion is complex construction. So hospitals, airports, stuff like that. The type of things that we are going to build in India in a big way. Now, ask yourself, when was the last big innovation in construction? 2 big innovations in construction were brick and crane. So when was the last time a new material was introduced in construction? Sorry? Almost 100 years ago. There have been minor improvements along the way. The quality of cement has become more quick fixing. You can have some of these insulation materials. Those are minor changes. The fundamental building construction technology has not changed in 100 years. High amount of inefficiency. So why is it that a ship, which is 500,000 square feet, 8 stories high, 1,000 rooms, 1 airport in it, can be built on water in 4 months, but a hospital of the same size takes 4 years on land? What's wrong with that picture? Okay, so now we have a company. I'm not here to advertise, but just to stimulate your thinking. 2 guys, both were chip designers at Intel and then worked at Cadence Design, and they said, if I take a microchip and I magnify it 9 orders of magnitude, it looks like a building. The 3-dimensional geometry of a building is the same as that of a chip. The cells become rooms, the wires become hallways, and so on and so forth. It even functionally behaves like a building. So the constraints on a chip use 3 milliwatts of power, have so much heat, etc., in building as well, who use so many kilowatt hours of energy, there should be 8 hours of daylight, and if it's a hospital, the nurse should not walk more than 3 kilometers a day, 2 hallways should not be next to each other. You impose all these constraints and run them through an optimization system. How many people from VLSI design? Done some layouts, done some optimization? Just imagine, can you apply that to building design? Exactly. Now that's transdisciplinarity. Somebody from chip design industry is out there trying to revolutionize building design industry. So for those of us who have strong ties to India, who we go back to very often, or are looking to move back to India for some time, even if we are from the IT industry, think of even if you're from the IT technology background, think of industries like infrastructure. So will IT make India better? Absolutely, yes. Yeah. Of course, to stay with the developed world or to stay ahead of the developed world, that's extremely important. But not fixing the infrastructure problem is not an option. Right? To bring global investment in a climate that is perpetual, that is self-sustaining, not solving the infrastructure problem is not an option. So the kind of inefficiency we have in this country, there's no need to replicate that in India. Okay? Then I go to my next point, which is no hypercycle investments, social media. I mean, look, how many of you used MySpace before you were on Facebook? How many of you are on Facebook? Gosh, wrong age group, yeah. I'm not on Facebook, by the way, so why am I complaining? So, and people who are on Facebook, any one of you was on MySpace before? No one. Do people know there was MySpace? Yeah. It was once the largest social media company. Is there a logical reason why MySpace should have failed and Facebook should have succeeded? No, none. There is no scientific logic that says one should have succeeded. It just so turned out. Lots of times things just turn out that way. And I'm not saying they were poor programmers or not good professionals. They were all of that. Sometimes just things turn out that way. But there's no scientific merit to have said one should do better than the other. If one UI is better, the other can also make it better. That's not rocket science. But to say if I have a new molecule that can solve some class of cancer, or if I have a new technology, a new material that can make building construction more sustainable or more quick or more efficient, that's groundbreaking. That can revolutionize. That has sustainability. So things like social media, nothing wrong with them. Our children need it, so we get used to that as well. But they are what I call hype cycle investments. Hype, bhed chal, I mean, we're all good at that, is not what good entrepreneurs should be thinking. White spaces, look for spaces that have not been touched before. I talked about construction. There are many other examples. In energy, there are a few. Look at agriculture. So much the way I talked about infrastructure, look at agriculture. When were the last big innovations in agriculture? Roughly 40, 50 years ago, when new fertilizers were invented, when new pesticides were invented. How about if in India you have that Ravi ki fasal or Kharif ki fasal, right? There are two crop cycles a year. Does it have to be only two? By the natural gestation cycle of plants, how many crop cycles can you have in a year? You can have 4 or 5 easily. Question is, what is the technology required? What knowledge do you need from seismic data, from cloud data, from weather data, all of that, and water table data, to be able to very quickly, in dynamic fashion, keep feeding this input to the farmers and farming communities? That revolution, even people coming from IT, I mean, how many of us, hum kheti badi karenge dobara jaake, like how many of us think that way? How big is the farming industry globally? How big is the food industry globally? Also in $1 trillion. Okay? And actually the next big play in food technology is not going to come from chemistry. It's going to come from technology, IT. And then, of course, I've mentioned some large markets, healthcare, clearly, construction I talked about, material science, some new materials. So when you sit in a room, AC is fixed at certain temperatures. Some of us feel, it's too hot. And some of us say, I'm fine. And you keep constantly adjusting the temperature when there are 5 people in the room. Question is, can clothing have some elements that will adjust it to your needs without having to burn up more energy or freeze some people? And of course, enterprise technologies will always remain important because they're enablers for all the others. So with that, I'll rest my case. Thank you very much for listening. I believe our country has a bright future. When I say our country, I mean this, but I also mean the one we left behind that we have our heart and strings attached to, that we go to very frequently. Everything, sir, that you talked about is absolutely essential. If only we add to it just that open-mindedness and lateral linkages, we have a brilliant future. Thank you very much.
I think that was a great presentation and a great set of slides. Thank you, Ajit. I want to thank him for sparing some time on this Saturday. I know he's a busy guy. I'd also like to request Chandraji to give him the plaque from our side.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Folks, this is where we disperse into different tracks. There are 4 parallel tracks which are running.